And the next is The Starving Artist and the Masterpiece. The last leaf is set in Greenwich Village, a bohemian neighborhood in New York City, famous as a gathering place for writers and artists. Sue, Chauncey, and Behrman have moved to this neighborhood because it's cheap and vibrant, but poor conditions in the improvised areas of the city in this period, which included overcrowding, cold weather, and lack of sanitation, meant that deadly illness could spread quickly. In the story, an outbreak of pneumonia makes Chauncey seriously ill and ultimately kills Behrman. Despite the adversities of poverty, alcoholism, and disease, however, all three characters have made the decision to accept these hardships in order to pursue their art and produce what Behrman calls a masterpiece. Sue, Chauncey, and Behrman attempt to make a living by painting, but can barely make ends meet. I can sell the editor man and buy port wine and pork chops, Sue tells Chauncey, suggesting that food is hard to come by. Similarly, after decades of work as an artist, Behrman only makes a small income as an artist model and has become an alcoholic. The narrator asserts that many other inhabitants of Greenwich Village share their predicament. Indeed, he suggests that the neighborhood is a gathering place for artists, not only because of the cheap rent, but because their winding, maze-like streets make it difficult for their creditors to find them. Thus, the story's three main characters are living the quintessential life of a starving artist. These three characters weather adversity because they are committed to an artistic project, even if that project seems like a distant dream. Chauncey wants to paint the Bay of Naples, but her poverty and poor health make a trip to Italy seem implausible. Sue labors over a single painting throughout the story, working through most of the night. Although Behrman is over 60, he has had little success. He is obsessed with painting a single great picture, which he terms his masterpiece, but he hasn't shared it yet. For each of these characters, the promise of eventual success keeps them going, and it's when Chauncey forgets her desire to paint the Bay of Naples that she loses her desire to live. At the end of the story, Behrman does paint his masterpiece, the illusion of a leaf painted on the wall outside Chauncey's window. After he has completed this great work, the one he has struggled for all his life, Behrman succumbs to pneumonia, suggesting that the promise of a masterpiece had been his only motivating force. It's significant that he produced his masterpiece after decades of solitary struggle. It's ultimately his desire to help his neighbors inspires him to produce a great work of art. The last leaf suggests then that even starving artists rely on the social bonds of their neighborhood. Behrman models for Sue. He is inspired by Chauncey, and from Behrman's masterpiece, Chauncey regains her will to live, primarily because he remembers her own desire to make great art. Painting a masterpiece is not simply a matter of technical accomplishment, then. Art, the narrator suggests, is a communal project. And the last theme is friendship and sacrifice. Ultimately, Behrman's great masterpiece is not a typical painting, but a single leaf he has painted onto the wall. A leaf so realistic that both Chauncey and Sue believe it's truly the last leaf on the vine. This masterpiece saves Chauncey's life by returning her will to live, because he went outside in a storm to paint the leaf. However, Behrman catches pneumonia and dies. This sacrifice is not the only selfless act in the story. Although the three protagonists have few possessions to call their own, they survive hardship by loving and caring for one another. Although the characters in the last leaf lead difficult artistic lives, they find meaningful connections to others in Greenwich Village. Sue and Chauncey have left their families in Maine and California, but they meet in a restaurant on 8th Street and form a new household together. The cantankerous old artist Behrman, who has lived alone for 40 years, nevertheless feels a powerful love and responsibility for his neighbors. He regarded himself as a special mastiff in waiting to protect the two young artists in the studio above. When Johnsy first becomes ill, she turns away from human companionship, which seems to equate social isolation with illness and death. Convinced that she is dying, Johnsy wants to be alone. "Couldn't you work in the other room?" she asks Sue coldly. In response to Sue's desperate call to stay live for her, Johnsy doesn't respond, lost in her own solitude and depression. It's Sue's attention and Behrman's act of kindness in painting the leaf that restore her to health. The story may finally suggest that Behrman's masterpiece isn't a painting at all. Rather, his culminating achievement is a sacrifice of his own life to save Johnsy. Ultimately, he finds inspiration not by painting alone in his dark room, but by using his artistic gifts for the benefit of another person. Indeed, the last leaf suggests that artistic success, health, and even life depend on the social bonds of friendship that, in the narrator's word, tie people to earth. Ultimately, Behrman's masterpiece is his gift for friendship.